Greetings consumers. I am your good morning girl Stacy Spactus. Today my assignment is to interview a previously unknown creative who refers to himself as a feral artist. Good morning Ray. I'm sorry to say you look terrible. Are you sure you are ready for this?
Thank you for your concern, Stacy. I'm afraid I've been up late all night long unscrewing the unscrutable. It's hard work being a creative artist, but you gotta stick to it. The simple answer is, it's not a question of talent. It's a question of how determined are you.
Very well, let's continue. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? What is a feral artist?
Well, it's a sad story, but it's a common one. I worked for almost 40 years in the illustration trades. Used to run the big printing presses. Design advertising, illustrate books, that kind of thing. Had a career going in Boston when I finally got fed up with cities. The thing is, I never really attained my best as an artist because I never spent any time at all doing what my creativity would have led me to do. I was always doing someone else's ideas. And most of those ideas were something whoever Mr. Moneybags saw in a magazine and decided that he wanted that, or something like that. Or he had some idea that he'd sketched out on a napkin. And he had no clear idea of how to do it or what to make of it. That's why he hired me. But his idea was rarely equal to what I could have done had I been basically unleashed, like any artist. I finally got fed up with the city. I moved out to the country. I was creating a body of work, paintings. Finally got turned on to computer art. This was, 10, 12 years ago. I was sleeping out in the woods next to my cabin, just a little bit down the hill from it, when I woke up and saw that the sky in the direction of my cabin was bright red. I ran towards it and realized that my cabin was now fully engaged on fire. I couldn't get near it, it was so hot. In that fire was destroyed everything I had ever made, except for stuff that had been sold to various customers. My previous body of work was completely destroyed. It was as if, as an artist, I had been erased. This brought me about a new state of mind. What a lucky guy. How many get to a certain point in their career, how many artists that is, get to a certain point in their career when everything they own and ever knew of their art was completely destroyed and erased with no record? Well, you start again. Only you already have all the skills, all the knowledge, all the muscle memory required to have done a complete body of art. So I started again, and I have done very well. By feral artist, what I mean is I spent many, many years learning all the tricks of the trade, how to scumble, how to watercolor, how to paint a face, how to mix a skin color, on and on and on. Thousands and thousands of things that people don't think about that artists have to learn and master in order to ply their trade. I began using it on computers. And I realized that a great deal of what I had was invented stuff. It was invented by, culturally invented is what I'm getting at. And it referred to the culture, and it was meant to hold back, to structure the type of art you did. Commercial art. There's certain ways I could do art, and there's certain ways I could do art that simply would not sell. And that's the problem of the artist. The true creativity just isn't going to sell. What you want is something people have seen before and are comfortable with. For that reason, I now call myself a feral artist. I no longer play by the rules. I have seen behind the curtain.
Not particularly original, Kant, Nietzsche, Picasso, and others all regarded artists as the progenitors of culture.
I was raised in western New York, born in Buffalo. That's milk country, if you don't know. Most of them are spent huge herds of cows, all mostly for milking. Lots of beef. Beautiful, perfectly kept Dutch farms. Lovely countryside covered with maples in the fall. Turns blazing orange. Father killed himself when I was 2. We struggled a lot. I don't know how that turned out. I have 3 siblings. A younger brother and 2 twins, Mike and Mary, and then the little baby, Daniel, who's now 43, I believe. I've always wanted to be an artist. I have, for 40 years, lived by the do a better job, get a little bit better every day, which means I have to draw. I have to draw constantly, and it never stops. I'd say I'm probably obsessed with it, considering the gigantic body of work I have created and the amount of time I've had. Who am I? What am I? I don't know. Along about, I was a North American Presbyterian once. All that's crumbled since then. I've learned about the lies. And being a Presbyterian, I don't like lies very much. So I find myself suspended in air, as it were. I am an anarchist, deep down in my soul, with the understanding that we can't, if we were to turn to anarchism tomorrow, most of us would die. So looking forward to a time when life will make a little more sense. A feral artist is one who has rejected the values of society and decided to explore the human condition in a much wider range. This often involves psychedelics, philosophy, and of course art. Looking at things, and how you're looking at things, and studying how human beings look at things and see things and perceive reality. That's really the key to art. But it also requires compassion. You can't manufacture art. It has to come from a beating heart. It has to come from a compassionate human being, someone who reaches out and seeks to understand what it's like to be someone else. Art is therapy. Art got me through the darkest period of my life. I have been deeply clinically depressed for well over 6 years now. Slowly, step by step, avoiding the PTSD, I'm pulling out of it. And my art reflects as much. You have only to read the story, see how it gets a little bit happier. I believe artists are responsible for the kind of community and culture we live in. None of us makes any great impact. Sometimes one or another has a noticeable impact. But the culture does what it's going to do based on the ideas that are extant within it. And artists originate the ideas. And women spread them around by gossiping over the back fence. And that is where culture comes from, and that is how societies behave, is based on their culture. And that is what I think a feral artist is. And I am not the first, nor shall I be the last.
I agree. Modern commercialism has led to a commodification of art itself. Artists must always consider their audience and allow it to modify their product from the original pure impulse. Tell me more about your animated series Smokatopia.
How did we ever get to the point where we decided that we would base our culture entirely on greed and selfishness? It's unsustainable. It can't be done. The individual cannot support himself. We are a community. Humans are a herd animal. We share the burden of survival, or we don't survive. We take an interest in each other's lives, and that is the kind of art that you need, about taking an interest in other people's lives.
You have put an amazing amount of work into it for the last 10 years. What do you hope to achieve?
Well, primarily I regard the work as medicine. As I mentioned, I went into a deep depression some years ago, and I've been slowly working my way out. I credit the working on the art as the primary reason I'm alive today. If you check the very first animation, which is called The Great Sad, Crossing the Great Sad, or The Stranger, you'll see it's about crossing an empty desert all alone, which was much the feeling that I was trying to express at the time. Since then, my ideas have grown, and the world, I've always wanted to create a world, or I've actually created several worlds, but this one is the most amazing. It's almost entirely made up of MacGuffins. A MacGuffin is a tool used by authors, perhaps too much, where you come to some point in the plot where you can't figure out what to do next, and suddenly the hero has a device or a pocketed ray gun which he uses to destroy the bad guy and turn things around that you had no idea, that had no reason to believe it should be there, but it is. And that's a MacGuffin. Well, my universe is completely filled with MacGuffins. That is the Smokytopia universe, and there's a reason for that. I'm primarily talking about perfected human society, the culture of Cedar Grove has a written history going back as much as 20,000 years. They've pretty much perfected society. So I want to demonstrate how this society works, and at least put those ideas out there. I'm not original. I didn't invent all this stuff. It's a bunch of notions I've read about and put together over the years. So it all sounds good to me, and it makes perfect sense. And I hope I can finish the entire story before I die. I am 72.
I noticed a modicum of casual full frontal nudity. Aren't you also exploiting women to increase viewership?
Well, the story is so complex I haven't gotten around to it yet, but you'll find a lot of male full frontal nudity as well, including frank commentary and depiction of all sorts of human situations, including bloodshed and violence. But those are not the points of the story, so they're not going to be put front and forward. While some of the women will be quite lookable, they are not placed there as eye candy for males. They are there because they want to be. For example, we're living in Cedar Grove. We're living in a society that has perfected itself. They're body conscious, but they no longer have any shame. They see no reason for shame. Clothing is for decoration and for protecting the body in difficult circumstances. And it definitely increases the number of eyeballs I get. Is that my fault? Besides, I have a very strong feeling of appreciation for the female form in all its forms, but also as well for the human form. Watch them sometime. Sit down in a mall and watch people sometime. They're beautiful. Even the horrendously ugly ones. The ones with a limp. The ones with a sagging face. The ones who have obviously seen hell in their life. The ones who smoke too much and have leathery skin. The variety of the miracle of humanity is staggering.
I've viewed the whole series, and while I see many clues, I can't figure out what's going on. There are many points that seem very insightful and creative, and others, I don't know, sometimes I just don't get it.
Oh, well, not to worry, that's not your fault. I've taken One of the reasons this will never be a commercialized project is no commercial entrepreneur will ever understand or take the position of a story being written out of a timeline. So, in other words, things are happening, episodes occur essentially based on whether or not I think I can do the animation or not. So, a lot of events are happening out of order, which makes it difficult for the reader or the viewer to determine what's going on. Plus, random stuff happens. Uh, these are not super beings, they're ordinary people. They make mistakes, they do stupid things, they have insane ways of looking at the universe. And every once in a while, something just occurs that has no explanation, just like real life. And it's very unlikely that you'll ever find out, for that matter. Of course, I should point out that plot-wise, it's all intricately tied together, and many clues to what's actually happening are laid about in a generally disorderly manner. Ultimately, I like to think the figuring out what it is that's actually going on here is the kind of thing that would improve people's way of thinking. We'll see.
I've heard you regard AI as another tool, like a paintbrush. You don't think AI will put many artists out of work?
I think we're looking at a brand new era of creativity, something so far beyond the Renaissance as to be in a completely different class. For my own part, I'm not doing anything commercially viable or that anyone's going to want to invest in as a media project. So I'm supporting it entirely with my Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Raymond Barnes, by the way, which means that the artwork I produce, which is the animations for the most part, as well as various bits of commentary and so forth, are all given away free and not meant to be sold. And I steal liberally from various pop music and video venues, but I don't own any. I don't claim to own any of those things. They're not becoming mine. I'm doing them. I'm using them out of appreciation for the sheer genius and technological whiz-bangery that produced them in the first place. So, one only hopes that...
Thank you for sharing your time with us, feral artist Ray Barnes. Have a beautiful day in your parallel universe.